Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Hello and welcome to Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney, president of Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
And I'm Craig Freeman, media law professor at LSU. When a lone shooter took the lives of 20 students and 6 adults at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut last month, his actions opened a national conversation about the issues of gun control, mental health, and school safety. President Obama has presented an aggressive agenda to Congress to confront the nation's gun violence. He has also signed 23 executive actions demanding, among other things, a national dialogue on mental health and incentives for security officers in schools.
Well, so where does Louisiana stand in response to the tragedy in Connecticut? Louisiana voters recently passed a state constitutional amendment making its citizens' right to bear arms the strongest in the nation. Mental health services, largely funded by Medicaid dollars, have been cut statewide at the same time that Governor Jindal has opted out of a federal Medicaid expansion. The legislature, as well as a multi-agency task force, is exploring Louisiana school safety. Here's an overview. For firearm instructor and former Baton Rouge Police Chief Greg Ferries, the right to bear arms is sacrosanct.
I'm concerned about anything that would impede the right of a law-abiding citizen to possess and use a firearm under the Second Amendment.
Ferries has been closely following the federal response to the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. President Obama announced an aggressive anti-gun violence agenda earlier this month, including banning so-called assault weapons and high-capacity magazine clips.
If high-capacity above 10-round magazines are banned, it will, for the trained person, have almost no tactical effect for the simple reason that you can do a magazine change with minimal training in 1.5 to 2 seconds.
While urban dwellers may see no need for weapons such as an AR-15, Ferries thinks it can play a pivotal role in rural areas.
For defense, we need assault weapons if we are in an isolated rural setting in a dangerous environment. The Texas and Arizona border with New Mexico definitely comes to mind.
The problem with the assault weapons ban is it's just not very effective.
Timothy Mesh is a criminal defense attorney from New Orleans. He says that the 1994 assault weapons ban just prompted more ingenuity from weapons producers.
What the gun manufacturers did, they just went around and invented new products that had different characteristics, but that essentially did the same thing. For instance, the weapon used in the Newtown shooting was actually manufactured and sold during the past assault weapons ban.
Mesh also notes that in the last 4 years, the United States Supreme Court has issued 2 major opinions, which legal scholars believe strengthen the Second Amendment.
So Congress is going to have to be very careful because the Supreme Court is closely going to scrutinize whatever they do.
Of the state's congressional delegation, only Democrat Representative Cedric Richmond of New Orleans has firmly endorsed limits on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Governor Jindal's support for the November state constitutional amendment on gun rights drew accolades from the National Rifle Association. Recently, he announced a push for the reporting of severely mentally ill Louisiana residents to the database used during gun purchases, something state statute currently prohibits.
A lot of studies have shown that the mentally ill is no more violent than the general population.
Dr. Anidi Udolpha is the medical director of the Capital Area Human Services District. Dr. Udolpha says incidents such as what happened in Connecticut should raise our awareness of the mental health of those in our care.
It is important to look out for signs of any possible mental illness, if present, if there's any behavioral problems that is worrisome. And we always encourage parents to talk to somebody, talk to a professional.
In Louisiana, children can also be referred by teachers to social workers and doctors in one of the 65 school-based health clinics in 28 parishes. Magellan, the company which has been managing the school-based therapy program since March, plans on expanding it. For adults with mental illness who have stopped seeking treatment, like the Virginia Tech shooter, Louisiana has strong laws providing court-ordered outpatient care. Nicola's law, passed in 2008, was named for New Orleans police officer Nicola Cotton, who was murdered by a suspect with paranoid schizophrenia who was no longer taking his medication.
The announcement that ECSS would be closing came on the same day as the shootings in Sandy Hook.
Dr. Mary Gleason is a child psychiatrist and co-director of ECSS, or Early Childhood Support Services. The program served the mental health needs of 500 children aged 6 and under in 9 parishes. ECSS, which received national accolades, lost its funding in December due to mid-year cuts to cover a nearly $166 million budget deficit.
I think that this is something that we strive for and something that we've been so proud of Louisiana for being at the forefront of early childhood mental health services.
Through her work with ECSS, Dr. Gleason has seen children, some headed down the same path as the Newtown shooter, turn their lives around.
We've seen children who had significant, severe aggression that was worrisome and dangerous to other people, who, with the supports of the case management services, the clinicians, and sometimes the psychiatrists, are able to function well in school, to be able to make friends and share toys, to be able to sit in their classroom and be able to learn from their teacher.
The ECSS cuts followed $551 million of cuts 6 months earlier to the state's Medicaid program, most of which hit the Southeast Louisiana Mental Hospital in Mandeville. The hospital has been privatized, but the number of beds has dropped from 176 to 58. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, Louisiana spends just over $62 per capita on mental health services, compared to the national average of nearly $121. Governor Jindal is opposed to accepting the Medicaid expansion offered through the Affordable Care Act, saying it will cost the state $3.7 billion over 10 years.
In Bossier Parish, our school resource officers are actually licensed sheriff deputies. They are trained law enforcement officers that the sheriff's department has assigned to our middle and our high schools.
Bossier Parish School Superintendent D.C. Machen was one of a dozen witnesses appearing last week before the House of Representatives Homeland Security Committee to discuss school safety measures. Machen says the 13 officers cost the district $1 million annually.
I don't think that more guns is going to solve the problem.
Representative Terry Landry is vice chair of the Homeland Security Committee and served as head of state police during the Foster administration.
I spent 27 years in law enforcement, and police officers carry a sidearm. If an individual walk in with an assault rifle, am I going to confront him with a 9 or 10 round magazine? And he's got 100 rounds, high capacity magazines and high power rifle. I'm not going to confront this guy.
For Landry, any discussion about Newtown should include mental health care and addressing the country's culture of violence.
I don't think there is any piece of legislation that is going to prevent the type of incident that we saw happen in Connecticut. But I think we ought to have a debate, a wholesome, and put everything on the table. And how do we protect our most vulnerable? And that's our children.
Joining us in our studio to discuss Louisiana's response to the Newtown tragedy are residents from the Baton Rouge and New Orleans area. We're also joined by members of the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. Welcome, everyone. LSU's Public Policy Research Lab surveyed over 100 citizens on tonight's topic. Among the survey responses, when asked if they would consider a ban on assault weapons, 74% said yes, 23% said no, and 3% were unsure. Asked if they would consider legislation limiting the purchase of high-capacity magazines, the results were the same. 74% of respondents said yes, 23% said no, and 3% were unsure. When asked if they would consider a law requiring mental health background checks for individuals purchasing guns, an impressive 89% of respondents said yes, while just 8% said no. 3% were unsure. The primary reason a mass shooter commits violence is mental instability, according to 45% of those surveyed. The next most popular reason is consuming too much violent media, given by 15% of respondents. Other reasons included bad parenting, access to guns, and bullying, at 9%, 7%, and 4% respectively. Yet, when asked to choose what is most to blame for gun violence, particularly in mass shootings, the top answer was entertainment media, chosen by 32% of respondents. Lack of access to mental health services was only chosen by 20%, the same percent that chose poor parenting. So let's start there. Why do tragedies like the Sandy Hook school shooting happen, and who or what is to blame? Do we blame the entertainment industry? Do we blame video games? Who's responsible for this?
I didn't play with them, growing up, but I can't believe that is the primary cause of why we're seeing some of these incidents. If that was the proximate cause, we would see a lot more of them.
Reverend Lee, I see you shaking your head. You've got some ideas?
Not yet.
Bernice, you do.
I don't believe there's one cause. I think there are multiple causes, and they all have to be addressed in different ways.
Bill, how can we address these?
I think we got to go back to parenting. Two parents, man and woman, parenting, and the man is responsible for teaching his children, and we don't have that. Over 50% of our children are in one-parent homes. They don't have a dad in there. Lyndon Johnson in 1963 made it where women could make money having illegitimate children. The dads went out of the home, and so did God.
Uday, you agree?
In some aspects of what he said, yes, there should be more parental instruction. There should be more parental involvement, absolutely. And that doesn't just go into this gun control aspect. It goes into all aspects of the development of a child. I think parenting as a whole is an issue, whether it's one parent or two. But there's always going to be family members who can serve some sort of supportive role for the child.
What about gun regulations? I mean, if I understand the parenting side, but if we had less guns on the street, would that make a difference? Would that change this at all? Clay?
I mean, I could see gun regulations if you had never allowed these assault weapons, so-called assault weapons. They're not really. They're just another semi-automatic rifle with cosmetic changes so it won't break. But if you had never allowed them to be sold in any form in the first place, then I could see, they would be limited in their use. But that train's already left the station. You have countless millions of semi-automatics and assault weapons out there that, these criminals, they're going to get their hands on them whether it's legally or illegally. They're not going to really care. You've got black market and everything out there.
Tiffany, so you're nodding your head. The train's out of the station. It's too late to stop.
The train has left the station.
And so what can we do to prevent these kinds of issues? Kay?
If you look at cause and effect, it all boils down to personal responsibility and individual responsibility. What happens, let's just say hypothetically this ban did happen, and then the criminals would have them. It's not going to stop them. And now you've just upset the balance for self-defense and personal freedoms. And let's just say utopia exists. Let's just go there and say no guns exist, not even the criminals have them. How do you explain how a 5'2" woman is going to take on a 6'2" attacker? You've taken away any chance she's had of protecting herself. There will always be crime. It's always been here. It's not going away. There's nothing you can do about it.
Lynn?
I think that it's nice to say if everyone was armed with guns, then good people would not be subject to violence. But I think the truth is different. I think the percentage of people who are actually protected by their own firearms is very small. And in fact, there are a lot of studies that show that people who own firearms have those guns taken from them and used against them. So I don't see the statistics backing that up.
There actually are statistics for that.
Yes.
NPR has shown that if there's a firearm in a household, there's a 43% chance it will likely hurt someone in that household. That's 43%. That's not 0%. It's too much.
But how do we get there? Clay says the train is already out of the station. What can we do, Bishop?
Well, I grew up where there was firearms in my home, but rarely do we have to even use it. I think the problem is that we see so much violence on television. Children are allowed to watch so much of this, not just games, but they all the time. And a lot of times people have a tendency to copycat what they see. Now, like she said, the train has left the station. We need to come up with a plan whereby we can protect ourselves at home and not be faced with this issue, because long as it's on television, it's going to happen again.
Martha, I saw you nodding your head. Do you agree? I mean, are we in a place where television is really affecting?
Oh, sure. I think television definitely has an effect, and I think it's part of responsible parenting. You know, teaching children about, or teaching young adults particularly about firearm safety, and of course monitoring TV. This all goes in with good parenting and holding your children accountable as they go from childhood to adolescence to young adults. So, yeah.
Now, Polly, I mean, when I grew up, we used to play with cap guns, and it didn't influence me to harm anyone.
Well,
Do you think the TV has gotten worse? Do you think things have changed over the years?
And I know when my grandsons were watching television, it was a scary show, and I kept saying, "This isn't real. This is a fake," but they acted like it was pretty real.
One of the things I think is a serious situation more than the TV are these video games. I mean, they are totally violent, and certainly parents should have control, and I think there should be control over buying those. You can't buy cigarettes if you're under a certain age. You can't buy alcohol, but you can buy these violent video games, which are far worse than the TV shows.
What about mental health? I mean, you know, at least in Newtown we had a person that may have had some serious other issues. Is there anything that we can do to help that, Robert?
Well, I think that's the crux of the whole problem. The problem isn't firearms. The problem is someone who does not hold life in value, and they're going to kill someone. We can't legislate that morality. We have the sixth commandment, which says thou shalt not kill. We have laws that say thou shalt not kill. We can't pass a law stopping it. And eliminating certain kinds of guns is not going to stop it either. I know my two boys, when they grew up, even with their hand, I would not allow them to point that handgun at anyone. If they had a rubber band gun or anything, they were not allowed to point any kind of gun at anyone. They had to respect that. And I think people who respect life are not going to kill someone else. People who have grown up not respecting life are going to kill other people, or people who have some mental instability are going to do it.
Well, Sherry, is there any advice you might give to a legislator as they prepare for this legislative session to figure out ways that we can help prevent these kinds of situations?
I feel like they need to be cognizant that sometimes these people that have the guns in their hands are not thinking rational, and they can be inhibited with drugs, alcohol, mental illness. Every gun owner does not have mental illness.
So do you think background checks might help?
I do think, of course, we're all worried about the HIPAA compliance when you're in medicine, and that in a way has protected us in America, but in a way it has prohibited some reporting that should have went on with the police department, ER to police department, home health worker to police department.
Well, what I think is that we have laws. We have plenty of laws. The problem is we're not enforcing them. And especially in mental health, our mental health, especially in Louisiana, has been cut to the bone. Even this past year, Governor General has cut it once again. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to enforce, some of the laws we have already.
Steve, I mean, you know, we're finding less revenue. Is there any way we can continue to offer the mental health services we need to maybe keep us safe, but balance
If I could
costs?
answer that, I would be out there doing it. But I don't know. It is certainly the dilemma as a state budget crisis that we have. I'm more concerned about the state determining who has mental health, the ability to own a gun, than I would be over reasonable limitations of what you can own. If we look at the statistics, it seems like a lot of these mass shootings were done with guns and ammunition legally possessed, legally obtained, and you wonder if there were reasonable restrictions on those guns, if they would not have been there, if maybe a child or two in Newtown could have been saved. So I'm more in favor, I think, of a reasonable limitation on guns than I am on trying to aggressively monitor who is or is not mentally capable of owning a gun.
Kay, you agree?
Yeah, I look at what's happening with the new proposed legislation, and in conjunction with news media, we've got this perception that mass shootings are happening more often. They're not, but there's this appearance that they are. And my problem is, I took one night and just did a bunch of research, and from the time of Sandy Hook, for about a month-long period, I looked up stories for defensive handgun use. And I only found about 29 of them. There were more out there, but I found 29 that saved 57 lives. Though that demographic is completely ignored. So if you take away their guns, are you not trading 57 lives to save 26? Where do you reconcile the defensive handgun use by legal gun owners? And it does work. It does save lives. And with respect to our law enforcement, we call them first responders. We need to keep expectations of them reasonable. They're actually second responders. They're not going to get there in time to help you.
We've got some first responders who are coming to talk to us today a little bit more about what's going on. And so that's all the time we have for this portion of our show. When we return, we'll be joined by a panel of experts to further explore Louisiana's response to Newtown. Welcome back to Louisiana Public Square. Tonight, we're discussing some of the ways Louisiana is responding to the tragedy in Connecticut. Joining us now is our panel of experts. Colonel Michael Edmondson is the superintendent of the Louisiana State Police. A graduate of the FBI Academy, Colonel Edmondson has been in law enforcement for over 30 years. Following the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in December, Governor Jindal appointed him to lead a statewide school safety task force. Dr. Betty Muller has been a child and adolescent psychiatrist for nearly 30 years. Currently an associate professor of psychiatry at Tulane School of Medicine, Dr. Muller has offered psychiatric consultations in school-based health clinics and outpatient treatment programs. Senator Neil Reiser, a Republican from Columbia, represents District 32, which encompasses 1/10 of the state's landmass. Senator Reiser was the sponsor of Senate Bill 303, that became the strict scrutiny state constitutional amendment for gun rights. Louis Unglesby is a Baton Rouge criminal defense attorney who has been selected one of the top 100 lawyers in the United States for the last 4 years. An avid hunter and gun owner, Unglesby believes in reasonable restrictions on gun ownership. Before we go to our audience for questions, if you could, each briefly tell us a little bit about what you hope Louisiana learns from the tragedy that took place in Newtown, Connecticut. Colonel, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, certainly as not only someone who's been in law enforcement over 30 years and a state trooper, but as a parent of 4 kids, I don't want that to happen here. I want to do everything I can in my power, and that's what this task force is going to be about. It's going to assess our 17, almost 1,950 schools in Louisiana, and let's make sure that we're doing the things we need to do to make sure they have the resources. It ought to be about an environment that's conducive to learning.
Doctor?
The issue that's been completely missed in the shooting is that it happened in a school, but it started at the home. This young man first killed his mother, then went to her school and killed children that she taught. So it was not the usual school violence that occurs with that individual having attended that school. I think this was very much a family issue that unfortunately played out in a horrifically different way in a very sad arena. And I think Louisiana needs to look at its families and its children and not necessarily at the schools and the fact that we do have to prevent school violence, but we have to look at families first.
Senator?
As Colonel Edmondson said, the first thing I'd like to state is just as a parent, what it would feel, I can't imagine what it would be like to lose a child in that incident or any other incident of such a horrific terrorist act basically that took place. What have we learned? We've learned that those people are out there. They're unstable, and try to identify them. That's part of what discussion will be here today.
Counsel?
Look, y'all, we're going to always have crazy people, violent people, and bad situations. What we can do is make them less dangerous. It's completely legal tomorrow to ban assault weapons. I don't mean stop selling them. They're already out there. Make them illegal. We buy them back. They did it in Australia. They bought back 680,000 guns in 2 years. Never had a mass shooting since then. We don't take anything from anyone. At a date certain, a year from now, whenever you want it to be. After that, it's like having cocaine. You just can't have one. You got a gun that shoots more than 10 bullets, you don't need it. It's not going to save you from anything.
I have to differ with you, Mr. Oglesby, in that, for instance, in the shooting in Virginia Tech, there was not an assault weapon used. He used a .22 pistol. He used a 9mm pistol. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not a member of the NRA. I'm an ex-cop. But I'm not up here to support the NRA aspect. It's not the gun. We've got to quit.
Undoubtedly,
These
you're right.
have been going on,
Okay.
whether it's in a school, whether it's in a theater. You go back throughout history. This is not even a United States problem.
Michael, it's not that people do bad things because of a gun. But let's change this dynamic from me being able to shoot 4 of you or 6 of you from all of you. Let's change the dynamic from all I've got to do in my sick mind is pull that trigger, input my 100 rounds, and I can wipe out everybody in this room before we can blink. Now, that doesn't mean that I might not be nutty enough to come in here with a 6-shooter and start shooting, but I only got 6, not 60. That's the point. And that doesn't impose on anyone's capacity to defend themselves, to hunt, to do recreational shooting, to do any positive use of a gun that exists. And no policeman has to worry, which I think my friend down here will agree, the biggest fear in the world is that you're walking into a situation where you might be outgunned.
Absolutely.
Well, let's just take this the school shooting in Connecticut. He had plenty of ammo on him. He had plenty of clips on him. I visited with Colonel Stebbins from the Connecticut State Police on the phone just recently. Here's a school that was locked. It was locked already. They lock the doors when the kids get there. The classrooms are locked as the kids go in there. He entered the building by blasting his way through the door. The principal gets on the microphone, and she's killed immediately. But the doors were locked. He had multiple magazines, so the ability to have one bullet in a magazine or 20 bullets in a magazine. He had multiple ones on there. So that aspect of it, from that point of view, people will just buy multiple magazines. We have laws on the books. Let's make sure those laws are enforced. We have the capacity to do background checks. But keep in mind there's millions of weapons that are already out there. And this situation here and others that we've seen is good people will go buy it. Parents will buy weapons for their kids. People that can buy them and then give them to someone. The laws where you do background checks on the first purchase of a weapon for someone to get a gun itself. We have a good chance in this legislative session to take some of the laws we're dealing with as far as the mentally ill. This young man was definitely mentally ill. The gentleman that killed the 2 deputies in St. John the Baptist Parish with the assault weapon, mentally ill.
The majority of crime and violent crime are not committed by the mentally ill. Unfortunately, they are guilty in these big dramatic episodes. But the majority of violent crime and gunshot deaths are not from mentally ill. They're from normal people within families and within neighborhoods and within relationships.
Well, I'm talking about background checks. I was just dealing with the mentally ill since that came up, a portion of it.
Well, but
So
I
we
think
can
that the
have it.
mentally ill are being targeted now as if they're the ones who have to have the background checks, and if somehow we prevent them from having guns, we're going to solve this gun violent
Well, we
issue.
do background checks on everyone. What we're talking about is a bill that comes up and when we have
I
information
understand
on
It's going to be mentally
so we
ill.
have to do
How
that.
many people in this room haven't seen a mental health counselor in your business, Colonel?
Well,
You have facilities
Right now that
for
information
mental
is
health
protected.
counselors. All
We
right,
just
now
have
we're
to-
going to
It
fill
should
out a form at Cabela's to some clerk,
Before we
send
get
it
too
to the
far.
psychiatrist here and let her tell us if we can get a gun. It ain't going to work.
What about we passed laws in Louisiana that make it a lot
about that.
tougher to limit guns in the way that the counselor is suggesting. How does that fit?
With the remarks that have been made, let's keep in touch with the fact that you're talking about constitutional right. There's a fundamental right. You have the Constitution. I'd be glad to talk about that. Is that you infringe upon a Second Amendment right. I mean, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press. I'll be sitting here with these individuals to defend those when the time comes. A semi-automatic weapon is a semi-automatic weapon. one that you use to hunt with and one that's classified as an assault weapon, other than the magazine capacity is the same. Multiple trigger pulls are capable with a six gun, a revolver. 2.5 seconds, you can make 6 shots. So double barrel shotgun, as far as capacity and number of rounds, you can take a 12 gauge with 6 shots in it and put 72 projectiles of a 33 caliber in 3 seconds. And so, you know, once you start down the road of infringing on the Second Amendment, where are you going to stop at when you start saying semi-automatic weapon, you're going to infringe on that, and when you start talking about number of projectiles, that's been brought up in the discussion already. Then do you classify, what's your classification?
The Supreme Court of the United States most recently said you could do exactly what I just said. What Scalia said is the Second Amendment, like all rights, is not an absolute right. It's a reasonable right granted to the citizens, and it may have reasonable restrictions. And there is nothing wrong with reasonable restrictions on things like how many bullets can I fire. When I go duck hunting, if I take my plug out and put in 4 shotgun shells, I can go to federal prison. Now we're protecting ducks. I'm worried about people.
85% of your murders in Louisiana, your violent crime has 2 nexus. It's illegal, it's drugs, illegal drugs, and illegal weapons. The majority of them, and you're certainly right, the majority of the people are not mentally ill. But that seems to be the focus now, and assault weapons seem to be the focus. But handguns, shotguns, rifles, all legal weapons are being used in those instances. I think we just have to be a better job identifying those and enforcing those
and
laws.
Rifles are all legal weapons that all of us like to use and have a utility. There's no utility
for self-defense.
Let's ask some questions. And let's
We've got a couple. And so Lynn, I know that you've got several questions.
On everything that's been said. First of all, Mr. Reiser, your comment that once we start limiting guns, we will not have any guns is really out of line. That's like saying that once we start putting speed limits on cars, then we'll only be able to go 0 miles per hour. So that's kind of a non-starter for me.
My point is, once you just start defining, using a definition of what based on capacity, then you encompass a large number of weapons.
And Colonel, you said that most of the violence is associated with gun deaths, associated with
violent crime.
Violent crimes associated with drugs. I understand that we're trying to limit our conversation tonight to gun violence as it relates to these mass shootings, and in particular the Sandy Hook shooting. And that, to me, is a completely separate type of violence from drug deal violence. So I think we need to talk about those 2 things separately and not mix them up.
And so
my question was going to be to Dr. Muller. Can we identify who these children are, who these young adults are? Do we know?
We can identify these children very early in life at risk for violence. And these are the children who have difficulty with anger management, poor frustration tolerance, difficulty with impatience, delayed gratification, and using aggression to get what they want. And so we see these kids oftentimes 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the red flags go up. Being dismissed from preschools, from nursery schools, not able to learn, family members saying they can't control their children when they're 3 and 4 years of age. So that we know that these are children who are at high risk. Some of them have constitutional biological issues that contribute to those difficulties. Some of them are being reared in families where it's chaos. There's no structure. There's no organization. And so these children are reared with disorganization, a lack of ability to adhere to a schedule, to a routine, so that when they get into school, they don't succeed at all. They fail. And then they keep failing. They fail in peer relationships. They fail in social relationships. They're failing academically. They're failing in their behavior. So it adds on and on and on to the point where eventually, to get what they want, they use the quickest, most immediate measure to get what they want, and Mike makes right. And unfortunately, they do get access to guns and other weapons and find it very effective in a way to intimidate.
Janola,
So what is it that we as a community and you as professionals can do to help give these children and these adults?
Let me tell you what we're doing in state police. I think you got to start mentoring as early as you can. I've got uniformed state troopers. I've got 980 of them around the state. I send them into the schools. They're in kindergarten, they're in first grade, and they're reading a book in uniform. They're talking about what they do as a police officer, and we're reading a book. You know, this gentleman in Sandy Hook, we'd had to get to him much earlier in life to make a difference of what happened that day. It was ultimately going to happen, unfortunately. But I think if we can get to them earlier and start mentoring them, we can help these families. We can see maybe they can see less cases as doctors. We can try to do that and find a way where we can get information out. And we can start. We see that all the time. We see a mass murder or someone does something. We hear about people on TV say, I knew there was something wrong with him. I seen that person act up. But yet we don't have a chance, or we don't do anything about it. So I think we've got to start identifying those people, and we've got to step out and find a way to try to do something about that.
Senator, does the state do anything, or do we have any plans to change that?
We are right now. We're speaking as far as like on the reporting mechanism that Governor General has talked about. Those that have been demonstrated to be mentally ill or endangerment to themselves, endangerment to others, or those that are not able to make decisions for themselves. We'll be handling that legislation this year. As part of a process that it moves into the NICS, a reporting mechanism. That legislation will move this year.
My concern, and I'm going to go on this very heavily, is don't make me the reporter when you have cut every program that has supported these individuals being able to be maintained in the community, and that the dictate is they stay in the community.
Look.
You've closed, let me finish, you've closed state hospitals, you've closed state institutions, you have cut funding. There are individuals living in the community in supported independent living with IQs less than 55 by themselves with minimal support because funding has been cut. I work in mental health centers. I used to have programs where I could send kids for respite care on weekends, and when families were overwhelmed, they could go and send their kids. Those programs are gone. No one's paying for them anymore. So that I have now this week 2 families coming in saying, take my kid. I had a mother telling me, call child protection. I don't want my son anymore. They were fine when this kid went once a month, 2 nights on the weekend to a respite program. But his mom cannot handle him anymore by herself. I'm seeing patients in 30 minutes. I'm expected to see them, to see the parent, to write my note, have it finished, to make sure I've got the prescription done, and then get them to the nurse. The nurses are expected to get vital signs and call the pharmacies to make sure the medicines are going to be given. Magellan does not pay for any nursing care, except if they give an injection. None. The mental health centers are expected to make money doing this when money is not being paid. It is becoming increasingly difficult to do our job.
Well, I'm a mother of 2 young children, and this was totally not the question that I wanted to ask, but if there's no way to limit through legislation gun sales of the assault weapon, just whatever type of weapons, can there be a tax proposed that with the sale of the weapon that funding stream could go toward mental health, like a dedicated...
Sure, make it $10,000 a bullet.
Obviously you could if you increase the sales of bullets. That would eliminate
if I need that gun
the bad
bad,
guys.
make me pay for it. Listen, y'all, we can sit here and we can debate the tragedies of our society over and over, and we know that what they are. We know the scant resources. Maybe they're put in the wrong places. While we're doing that, though, and while we're trying to figure out how to fix those things, and while we're trying to be better parents, and while we're trying to help each other in the community, how about just making it harder to kill each other? That's an easy one, you see. That's an easy one. That's an attainable goal, very simple, very easy. And now we can work on all these other great ideas, but while we're working on them, let's just make that poor disturbed person, grown man or child, less lethal. That's all I'm talking about.
Then we need to put our money into conflict resolution, anger management, And again, you keep talking about the disturbed individuals. The mentally ill are no more likely to commit violent crime or be aggressive than the normal population. We are our worst enemies. And you have to learn very early in life to handle your anger. We are aggressive by nature. We will try to do what we want and have our will imposed. I've said this repeatedly to my trainees. What is the only reason children get toilet trained? Why would they want to use the potty? Anybody have a guess?
Because it's easier for the mother.
Because the child wants to please their mother. That's the only reason that they become toilet trained. And it's easier for the mom, so the mom imposes that will. But that's that is what happens in our society with exchange. A tit for tat, if you will. And if we're going to stop violence, we've got to stop and learn conflict resolution.
I just think we're going all over the place. We're here talking about mental health because this is an issue. That's why you're here. That's why we. That's issue. Well, I think we all are experts in certain areas, right. So you certainly have the ability to talk on that, and we can argue the point. But the bottom line is, the families have to do a better job. Police can do a better job. The courts need to do a better job. Leaders need to. We all need to play our role and play our role more effectively. We can all try to fix the big picture, but why don't we fix our individual?
I think, Mike, we can do something with the schools.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And improve it there.
And we've got two students in school. Clay, you've been waiting patiently. Let you ask, and then Bishop Ann, I know you've got one too. Clay first.
Okay, Mr. Unglesby, I possess an AR-15, one of your so-called assault weapons. Now, I have broken that rifle down piece by piece when I was cleaning it. I've looked at every single component of it and my other semi-automatics, my 270 and my 30-06. What I've noticed is, number one, that AR-15, the core components, the parts that make a rifle, are no different from any other semi-automatic that I have. Shotgun, rifle, handgun, anything.
Why do you have such a, and son, if I may ask you, okay, what do you want with a gun that needs a banana clip? Your 270 and the other gun you mentioned, you can kill any mammal in North America with either of those guns, and they go boom, 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 3 shots, boom, 1, boom, 2, boom, 3. Why do you need an AR-15 that goes
At the most, I'll put 10 rounds in my clip. The only time I would ever put 30 rounds in a clip is when I'm on the range and I just don't feel like reloading.
All right, but what do you need with it?
But Clay, you're a responsible gun owner.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, this rifle, it's no different from any other.
That almost misses the point.
It is different.
We could get into why my car is different than your car. Okay? Why do you need X car instead of me?
Well, because my car, first of all, is controlled.
Because we're talking about personal choice.
I don't get to have a tank.
That's what it boils down to.
I don't get to drive around in a tank. Colonel Edmondson would stop me if I did do that.
But I like this gun.
Now, the reason I can't do that is because a tank is dangerous to public safety. A gun that shoots 30 times, that's made to shoot nothing but people,
well, you have the right to
is by
defense.
definition
Under the Second Amendment, you have the right to self-defense.
I'll give you the Second Amendment, and you give me the armaments of 1786, Senator. The Second Amendment has reasonable restrictions on it. If you go back and read the history of the Second Amendment, not what the NRA says,
weapons in common use when you're reading the Supreme Court.
That what the Supreme Court said precisely was that things like M15s may be regulated. That's the last word from Scalia.
This weapons in common usage, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that an AR-15 would not be a weapon in common usage.
But that's the tragedy.
But that
of the point. You're right.
So now I really think that you're.
That's the tragedy.
Let's ask Bishop Ann. Bishop Ann's got a couple questions.
I think that we're focusing a lot on the guns, on the weapons, and I'm agreeing with Dr. Muller that we're overlooking the situation that it started at home with the parent. Education. And a lot of times when the children are young, we buy guns and we give it to them. I never bought a gun to give to my kid, because it's telling them something, that it's all right to have them. They run around and they're shooting it at each other. That starts from a very young age. We need to eliminate that. Stop buying the guns. They're putting them in the stores to make money. But if we as parents would stop buying them and stop allowing our kids to play with guns. That's teaching them at a young age that they can use these things. I agree that we need more parental control and to teach our children. And a lot of times single parents, I was a single parent, so that meant I had to come up and be on the farther end to teach my sons, because I had 2 boys, how to handle themselves, not to be violent. That doesn't necessarily mean that that child is not going to have some tendencies. But if you see it and then you can tell that there are some violent tendencies, what is available as far as medical to help? We don't have any help here in Louisiana. We can cry out, we can go this place, that place. You have to go through an act of Congress to get some help for your children. Some mothers, they're saying they're ready to give up their children because they can't get medical help.
Well, unfortunately in Louisiana, it seems that the way that we help our kids is to medicate them. And I'm really upset about that message, beyond just other messages. That no, that is not the way that we're going to help our kids, is to medicate them and to somehow make them manage things that they really have to manage in coping ways and skill building ways by dulling emotions or dulling certain other issues that they have. Right. We need more programs. Right. I keep saying the same things: anger management, conflict resolution, the dissolution of ECSS. One of their main focuses of treatment were parent-child interactions, PCIT, parent-child intervention therapy, proven effectiveness, and how to get parents and children to manage their relationship in a mutually satisfactory way.
But after taking these programs away, what do?
We Band-Aid. And unfortunately, in many cases, many of my colleagues are using the medications, and not just 1, but 3 and 4 on children as young as 6 and 7 and 8. And it's very disturbing.
So they're walking around in a medicated state. What happens when all this medicine clicks and that you have violence?
Well, chances are they're not going to click and have violence. That's the whole point, is to keep them from being violent.
If I may.
The difficulty is they're not learning in school.
Right.
They're not learning any coping skills, and they're developing side effects to the medications, which make them feel even worse about themselves. So you're dealing compounded issues where you've got a troubled child who's coming to see a psychiatrist, which makes them feel less than adequate and concerned about themselves. They develop increasing poor self-esteem. And when they talked about to prevent violence, people have to respect others. We have very little respect for children in this state. This state does not respect its children. They don't vote, they don't have money, they don't count.
If I may, real quick, with your education for the firearms, if I may.
Well, let's hold on for just a second. I know that Jan has been waiting very patiently on this side.
I'm sorry.
I agree with the lawyer there that we definitely, there's no reason why we should have assault weapons. But don't start messing with the Constitution. Don't do that.
Well, here's the thing, Jan. That's where, and with all due respect, okay, you don't need a lobbyist to give you the right to have a handgun. You don't need Wayne LaPierre getting paid over $1 million a year and paid $18 million in the last election to congressmen to protect the Second Amendment. You know who's putting up the money for that? The people who make the guns I want to ban. Not anybody that's making a 6-shooter, not anybody that's making a .270 rifle, not anybody that's making a 30-06, not any deer hunter, duck hunter, recreational gun owner in this country. That money is coming from people who hide behind the Second Amendment to sell weapons of mass destruction. That's all I'm talking about.
But
I'm not talking about
restricting.
restricting.
The Constitution.
You
get rid of the lobbyists.
No, the Constitution says. That's the
How
beauty
can you
of this.
define that?
The Constitution says, according to the most recent case by Justice Scalia, the most conservative member of the Supreme Court, who upheld the right to handguns in the District of Columbia. And what he said was, handguns are agreeable in America. They're part of American culture. They are the preferred weapon for self-defense. However, reasonable restrictions on guns like M15s, which are nothing but AK-47s to civilians, and guns of that nature are allowed. That's what he said. So no one's fooling with the constitutional right of anyone to have anything they want, but what we're talking about is, what is the need for a gun whose name is assault weapon and that shoots 60 rounds? If you go deer hunting, where Senator Reiser lives, the law is you can only shoot one deer a day.
And I want to respond to that.
You can't shoot
you
four.
Said that. I hadn't had very many deer trying to break into my house. But, so what's the difference between 3 rounds duck hunting and 5 rounds deer? Which is state law. I haven't had the opportunity to have one try to break in my house where I might need that instance. So elaborate on that.
Share this with the Colonel. I hope he hadn't had that experience.
Is this a 2-hour show, by the way? Because I know we're going to lose what we're trying to accomplish here.
All I'll tell you is this.
Stories.
I've had a gun put to my head twice in my life. In neither of those experiences, one in my house, one in a bank, would me being armed have helped at all. You know?
Let's
and an AR-15 sure ain't going to save me. Unless I walk around with it.
To ask any questions, let me make sure we get to Hamp before time.
Okay. Look, I do want to say this. Look, we all grown folks. And we go back to Newtown, these are our babies we talking about. These little bitty kids in the classroom with that teacher that was gunned down by somebody that just had lost it, apparently. We should be doing everything we can to protect that, to prevent that from happening. We have people overseas fighting for our rights, our freedom here, and their kids are being slaughtered in America. Mm-hmm. And we can't agree to do anything about it. Something wrong with all of us. We need to find a way to change it, not keep it the same.
And Colonel, I know that you are a part of that task force that's really going to look at that in schools. What do we say to him?
Well, look, there's parents are watching. I think we've got to give them an answer. And the thing about it is we've got to assess the schools. Let's make sure. I mean, there's police officers in some schools. There's some that's not. Those local entities that want a police officer in school, let's put them in there. Let's make sure they're trained on looking for all this, because now we have reality to deal with. Let's make sure that we assess the school, that they're safe environments. It ought to be about that kid going to school, being in a safe environment, conducive to learning. Let's listen to the teachers. We're going to do that. Let's listen to not just the principals and administrators, but the school teachers. Let's listen to some of the kids. There's sheriffs in this state and chiefs of police in the state and fire chiefs that are every day in the schools. They're interacting. They're doing things. They've got incredible programs. Let's spotlight those programs that are working. Let's go to schools that maybe don't have something or don't have the resources. Let's first make sure they have the resources they need. Let's look at the laws that are in place. That's my job, to enforce the laws that are in place. Right now, these laws are in place to have these weapons. We take 100 guns a month off the streets in New Orleans, about 125, similar to that here in the Baton Rouge area. Let's make sure we do everything we can to create a safe environment, not just in our schools, but in our communities. Let's have a safe community where we're interacting.
I just want to follow up on that. The other thing, what are you guys going to do? What are your people going to do when you're outgunned, outmatched by these people with these kind of weapons? I have a daughter in law enforcement, and that's in my mind every day. What's she going to do with a handgun and some guy out there with an automatic weapon shoots 60 times and got a bag of clips? I mean, something, you can't match that. Yeah.
Certainly one-on-one you can't. Certainly when you're responding to something, you try not to go in with one person. You go in with multiple people. You've got to assess the situation as you move into it. But to be in a blind situation, it's something it's a horrifying nightmare that police officers thinking about. The school teacher. I mean, thank God for the one school teacher that actually talked him down in Connecticut. That to me, that's the person of the life. Yeah. Because this police response, they were there in 3 minutes and 20 seconds. That kept additional people from being killed. So we've got to train more and more in law enforcement. We've got to prepare for things that we know is reality. We've got to look at the laws that are there. If there's something that we think that ought to be suggested that could make a difference, let's make those suggestions to our legislator. We do have a governor that wants to make a difference. He's involved in things. He doesn't micromanage my department. He allows me to make the decisions. I interact with sheriffs and chiefs and fire chiefs and our emergency responders on a daily basis. Let's assess what we have, do little pieces at a time, and we can't fix it all at once. But I think we can systematically look at everything out there that needs to be addressed and looked at, and work with our medical professionals. People like the doctor here that every day you hear her passion. She wants to make a difference. She's got answers. Let's work with those to do. With our legislators who want to lead, to our lawyers that want to make sure that the things are done correctly, and to y'all as parents and said our greatest assets. You're right, are those kids. My God, I close my eyes and I think about those kids. It's horrible. Let's make sure it doesn't happen
The
here.
state of Louisiana needs to put its money where its mouth is. If that's what they say, they need to put their money where their mouth is. And unfortunately, the school-based mental health programs have been shut down. I was involved in Lafourche Parish, where we were able to set up a tier system. I was at the school, seeing kids that were less needy, able to work with parents, principals, and teachers, and solve some of the issues at the school. The more difficult children who required much more care, had hospitalizations, were on medications that needed close monitoring, went to the mental health center. It worked amazingly well.
We, unfortunately, have come to the end of our time here today, and so I know that we've got more questions. We're going to be able to continue our questions offline or off air. I hope that you guys get a chance to answer or participate in this conversation also online. And so we've run out of time for our question and answer segment, but I really and truly want to thank our panelists, Colonel Edmondson, Dr. Mueller, Senator Reiser, and Mr. Unglesby for their insight on this month's topic. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments.
Well, Craig, this issue is going to be hotly debated, I see, for all of the legislative session.
I think so, and it's really crucial that we get some answers as we prepare for the next school year. Hopefully we'll have some answers by then.
Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Louisiana Public Square. We encourage you to visit our website at lpb.org/public square. While you're there, take this month's survey, view extended interview clips, and volunteer to be on the show like several of tonight's participants did. You can also find resources there about this month's topic, including a guide for parents on when to seek mental health assistance for your child. Please give us feedback on tonight's program. We'd love to hear from you.
Data released this month by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention ranked Baton Rouge and New Orleans as second and third in America for new HIV diagnoses. For the number of AIDS cases, Baton Rouge and New Orleans rank first and fifth. Join us next month as we explore how Louisiana is confronting this health issue on Preventable, HIV, AIDS in Louisiana. Thanks for watching, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.
Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.